Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Rita VT, or possibly Retta VT. The song is Hollowness. The composer and singer are Minami, and this one has English subtitles, which are pretty important to get the meaning. So we do have a music video here. I have enlarged this about 31.5%. Hopefully that's large enough for y'all to read the subtitles, but if not, there's a link in the description for the original video file. Y'all can go there and watch that with the subtitles in a size that's readable. Let's dive into this and see what Minami is bringing to the table today. Massive guitars, but a very delicate piano line in the middle of all of this. The piano becoming even more emotive here and making room for the vocals. A lot of emotionality put into the vocals. The breathiness here, but the compression applied earlier too. That was like 15 BPM slowdown. Not a lot, but enough to feel. Those incredibly sharp inhales. We have this nice triplet pulse here. Not the first time this has been shown. The mix of sorrow and pain with a hint of anger out of the guitar on this side. Oh, coming in a little flat and sliding into that. And a key change. this triple feel really takes precedence in this slower tempo. Oh, that piano arpeggio. The guitar lining up with the held out vocal note before coming into this. Wait, is that it? For some reason, I was expecting more. I don't know why. We kind of had that first fake out, I guess about a minute prior to the ending, and I was thinking to myself, surely this can't be the end. And then it wasn't. We had a lighter sound, just vocals and maybe a piano, really quiet. And then that burst into the final bit, and I was like, all right, cool, we're going to be pushing towards an outro now. And then that was the outro. Okay. Caught me off guard there. Very cool track though. It definitely feels, I mean, it's rock. We got piano, we got guitar, we got bass, we got drums. We have very emotional vocals though. I don't know if I would socket this cleanly into the emo genre, but it certainly feels inspired by that. Taking emo, the extension into post-hardcore, and maybe bringing more of a lighter rock flair to that while keeping the theatrics. But there's a progressiveness to it all too that I noticed within the writing itself, the way that instruments voice themselves, the way that the melodies come in and flow and evolve and manipulate and change into others, the way that the song transitions between all of these ideas, the lack of a traditional song structure to this. There's a lot of progressive elements to it. But the vocals to me seem very emo inspired, which is pretty cool. Where should we start on this? Because there's a lot of things I want to talk about, and usually in my mind, while I'm listening to the track, I sort of build out a series of ideas. What can lend themselves into talking about the next thing, and how can I smoothly move between ideas? I didn't get a chance for that. I just have some cool stuff I want to bring up. I suppose it probably could be saved for last, but the vocals here, I think, are ultimately what sell me on this track, so maybe they're the most important to start with. Even right from the beginning, I think we had only heard 3 or 4 sentences and I was already sold on the vocal delivery. This is one of those times when I talk about the vocals being a performance, not something to show off your singing skills, but one to show off your emotional complexity, to become a character. Everything in here sounds like somebody singing their thoughts out, not someone singing something they have written previously. And I know that that's a small distinction, and some of you might not even really see the difference there. Every vocalist is going to write the lyrics first and then sing them later. That's just, unless you're improvising, that's how songwriting goes. But to me, there's a big difference between rehearsing an idea and perfecting it and performing that idea. And they both have their pros and cons. Neither one is superior to the other, but for me, this type of vocal delivery will always be something I can more easily connect with. You can certainly deliver emotion through harmony and melody. The notes you choose and how they reflect and bounce around and play within the chords underneath them. This is the way that a lot of Like instrumental music works, they don't have words, they still make you feel feelings. You can do the same thing with vocals, but the other side of the equation is to be less perfect. The small use of grit, of putting that compression in her vocals every once in a while really feels like she's digging deep just to get these out, almost as if it's about to become an animalistic sound in and of itself. There's sections in here where it's just after every syllable, we have this big breath. We have those really sharp inhales in here as well. I'm not going to imitate that one. There's all these things that make it feel like this person is experiencing these emotions as they sing, and it is affecting their performance. Now, of course, all of this is still practiced and rehearsed and performed. It's quite possible that every performance is slightly different, that there is an element of getting into this character and allowing the rawness to seep through, but it is still practiced and rehearsed in order to come across this way. But to me, it feels real. It feels live in a way that heavily rehearsed, perfected vocals typically don't, even though musically they might still carry that same emotion of anxiety, fear, sorrow, everything that I'm feeling in this track. I'm a sucker for this type of theatric vocal work that injects the emotions into the performance itself. And this vocalist does a phenomenal job of embodying this character and delivering these emotions texturally, sonically. And I feel like once we get to the end, you can really start to feel the exhaustion coming through the vocalist, that going through all of these emotions is mentally and emotionally straining. And it almost feels, I mean, maybe that's why the song ends so, I don't know, unceremoniously. I wouldn't say that it's abrupt. It just doesn't feel conclusive. It doesn't feel like a proper finale. Like there is a resolution to the chord progression, but it isn't one that implies the end, finality. You know, there's songs that end and you're like, this has got to be it. This is the final chord. There's no other way. And like the chord progression is creating finality in the music. That's just not what I got here. But maybe it is just running out of energy to continue. I mean, I can certainly feel that element, that exhaustion in the vocals already, just the way they're delivered. But I absolutely connected with the vocalist on this track. I loved every bit of this. And I really do think that, you know, the music, we're going to talk about that in a second. The music has some really neat ideas in here, and the song certainly would not be the same without it. But I think maybe even more so, this track would be completely different, or maybe I would even say less impactful with a different vocalist. The vocalist really makes this one. And I think that's the first thing that really stands out to me. And like I said, from the second sentence, I was already on board. I was like, this vocal performance is going to be sick. And it was. I don't think there was a single part in here where the vocals let me down. Now, with that said, there is a whole swath of ideas to go over when it comes to the instrumental parts. We have a really sick bass in here. We got cool bass lines, a great bass sound. We have cool piano work all throughout this track. Sometimes they're harmonic, just laying down some chords. Sometimes they're arpeggiating, shaping out the chords. Sometimes they're just kind of off doing their own thing. Some counterpoint to what the vocals are doing. I love how versatile they are. They don't really have a set role. They adapt to whatever this section needs. Some of the sections are just piano and vocals. So the piano kind of has to do everything. We get some chords, we get some light melody. Other times they are completely secondary. The guitars are laying down secondary melodies. The bass is giving us chordal information. The drums are giving us rhythm. The vocals are giving us lead. What's the piano to do? Well, they'll just do some little ornamental things, fill in some space, add some extra color to the track. Nothing to really take the spotlight away from anything, but certainly additive to the work as a whole. And I feel like anytime I listened in, oh, what's the piano doing now? Yeah, they're supporting the song in whatever way they need. They are the biggest team player on this track, and I am a huge fan of that. Just listening to somebody be a jack of all trades, someone who wears all of the hats and consistently puts together whatever is necessary for the song to be the best that it needs to be at any given moment. Something else that really stands out to me as an important element of this track is time. I'm not sure what it's trying to say. I'm not saying this is important because I have a read on it already, but it just feels integral to understanding this track. I think the first time the chorus kicked in, I immediately felt that 10 to 15 BPM drop. It's it's something, man. And it's not, it might not even be 10 to 15 because that's, it's working with intervals of 5. This doesn't feel even like that. It's just this, the first 2 notes come in, you're like, oh, we've slowed down, there's more space between these. But as the 3rd and 4th beat come in, and then we go to the next bar, and it's slower than I expected, but it's also faster than what would have been right. It feels temporally out of place, primarily just because whenever we add or subtract time, we're either jumping wildly between 2 very distinct tempos, or we're working with neat intervals like halftime or double time that's a multiple of 2. Something where you can feel the new beat in the original tempo somehow, some way. For double time, for instance, if this is the beat 1, 2, 3, 4, double time is ba 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 ba. You can still feel that. If you're playing eighth notes, you're playing the double time. When we shift to a double time tempo, those eighth notes are still there. They're a part of the original rhythmic language, but that's not what happens here. There's almost no similarity to them, but it's also such a small movement too. It's large enough to feel, but small enough not to have really any relationship to the original. It is wild. And the thing is, it's not unusual to have small tempo increases. In particular, pop music likes to do 5 to 10 BPM increase heading into a chorus. Usually it's not noticeable, but you do feel the extra electricity. Something about it feels more vibrant. It's because of that little small jolt of speed. So I find this to be really interesting because it is quite noticeable, but still not a large jump either. And I think that's what makes it so odd, so unique. I don't think I hear something like this very often. I've been trying to think of another song that I could draw a parallel to that would have composed a section divide like this, and nothing's really popping up in my head. But there's also a division to a subdivision, if you will. We have polyrhythm pretty much right from the beginning of the track, and this was something I commented on all throughout the song, was the 4/4 that can be felt, but also a triplet pulse. And when we hit the slower section, the triplet pulse is pretty much all that you can feel. It's hyper accented, but in pretty much everywhere else in the track, you actually can feel a hemiola, which is a 3/2 polyrhythm. And it kind of sounds like da 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 dun dun da da dun dun da da dun. It's kind of tough to do with just one sound. It's easier to hear the duality if I had 2 different instruments, but I don't. But it's for every 2 beats in the 4/4, it's 3 beats within that. And that sort of schism, that division, that pulling is present all throughout this track. There is this duality. And I didn't pay a lot of attention to the music video. I'm not going to lie about that. It's not something I typically do when it comes to any reactions on this channel. I will, when I go back and read the lyrics to it, I'll have the video up because the lyrics are there anyways. I'll give it a little bit more attention, but I did notice that there was 2 of the main character, one dressed in white and one dressed in black. And I'm wondering if this 3/2 is supposed to represent that somehow. And maybe when we slow it down, are we shifting into the 3? Is that why that feels so natural in there? And that's one side taking over? I don't know. But between the slowness and the 3 against 2 polyrhythm that is persistent throughout this track, time feel, maybe more specifically, just seems to be a key part of understanding what this track is trying to do. Now, to wrap this up before we get into the lyrics, I just have a bunch of praise for this song. This is wonderfully written and composed. Many of the transitions in this track are smooth. There is some idea that is still present from a previous idea that takes us into the next, or maybe something that's coming up in the next idea is integrated into the track while we are still in the previous section, so that there's just this nice tie between everything. At one point in this track, I pointed out that there was a vocalist holding out this really high note, and a guitar kind of slid into that pitch, and then the vocalist left and the guitarist started their solo. This is the type of transition stuff I'm talking about, where the guitar started early, worked into what was already being played melodically, and then basically took the baton from the old melody and started their own melody. They were now the melody person. And it's little ideas like this that are persistent everywhere, shifting into that new tempo, focusing on the 3. That 3 is already kind of present within the hemiola, so we're not really changing much there. That is probably the most drastic change throughout the entire track, and it still has ties with what came before it. The fact that most of this track ends up being linear, I think, is just testament to how well this is written, of how well everything just smoothly moves between ideas. And I'm a big fan of all the transition stuff going on in here. Speaking on the variety of sounds and the linear writing overall, I love how much of this feels like a story unfolding rather than just a song being played. Every section seems to be evoking an extension of the emotion we previously explored, but maybe taking it in a different direction, or something analogous to it, or running parallel to it, or a variation of it. What if we went from grief into angry sorrow, into anger, something like that, to smoothly move between emotional atmospheres and switch up the sound sphere through modulation rather than intense, switching of light switches, just turning one sound off and turning the other on. There's always some sort of movement between everything that keeps it all connected. And while it is possible to break the track up into individual segments, it's also a track that feels like removing any of these drastically alters the meaning of the track. Whereas if you remove, a second verse and a second chorus from a more traditional song, you haven't really changed the track up too much other than just shortened it. But musically, you're still getting all the same musical ideas you would have. And I think that the mix of the thoughtful composition, the linear writing, and um, the emotional exploration throughout this track, all of it just comes together into something that feels phenomenal to listen to. And then you just tie in the counterpoint, the harmonies, all the different instrumentation, all of the things that make this unique from moment to moment. And you've got a hit song, dude. This is just really solid, maybe even in some cases exceptional progressive rock writing with an incredibly easy to connect to emotive vocal performance. And it just pushes it over the top. This is just an excellent song, all in all. Let me hit some lyrics on this, and then we're going to wrap this one up. So here we have a very interesting track about the dangers of masking for too long and losing a sense of self and identity through that process. The beginning says that a voice says you can rest now, but thinking back, it was just a sweet trap. Today I will act as my ideal person. It's fiction, false words, false image, an open mind though, and I made it myself, creating another identity for oneself to be. The chorus is interesting. It says to virtualize a lie. unscientific situations, and imaginary speech, almost as if to create something fictitious within one's mind. But it says anything is fine. Just give me love. Please love me. Words can no longer heal me, so just stay by my side a little longer. Stand in front of me, my doppelganger in the mirror. To craft a version of oneself that they think would be adored, that would fit in. But in order to do that, you have to continue fitting in. It's not something you can just turn off. You can't ever be your true self anymore. You have these friends, but they like this person you created, this ideal version of yourself. It says, I lurched forward beside the scale and I laugh at myself because there's no place for me anymore. Even if I want to go back, I can't return. I didn't even realize the weight of that single word. It had become my sacrifice. Where has my ideal reflection gone? They've come to find that they themselves are the reflection, the ones stuck in the mirror. It says, I wanted to break it, but I couldn't destroy it. My ideal reflection isn't here. Meaninglessly, I held out my hand into the depth of the mirror. They are now what is hidden, what is not shown to the world. Their true self. Anytime that they go out into the world, they are dressed as, they have the mannerisms of, they have the character of this person they created that they wanted to be, someone who was well liked. This is where things get interesting because while the lyrics kind of go in this direction, we return back to the chorus, the slowed down part, and it kicks off with the exact same line to virtualize a lie. It says a reflection isn't there. It's a disappearing boundary. I want to try one more time. The real one is right here. That one's wrong. Don't love the illusion of me. There's this feeling of wanting to get rid of it. It's that I wanted to break the mirror, to break this illusion, to show everyone who's real, but they don't have the confidence to do that. They fear that if they show their true self to this friend circle, then they won't be accepted. So the song lyrically ends here, but visually there's more to this story as it shows the original person choking their made up version, but the colors of their clothes, one being white, one being black, starts flipping back and forth and glitching as if to show that they're one in the same. At a certain point, after you have pretended to be someone else for so long, they're not another part of you. They are you. That's just who you are. But there's always going to be that part of yourself that, that isn't them. It's going to be fatiguing to wear that mask all of the time. There's going to be a part of you that wants to get out. This is social burnout 101 for anyone who has ever done this. To keep it up for an extended period of time alone is already exhausting. To keep it up for days, weeks, months, years, maybe, who knows how long. I can't even imagine that. The amount of mental exhaustion of pretending to be someone you're not. And, maybe it's not a completely fabricated person. There's probably still parts of them in this character they play, in this mask they wear, that is true to them. It's just not all of them. So I find this really interesting that it's called Hollowness. I think lyrically we are looking at losing a part of yourself, but in the music video, we're also exploring the merging of two. It's not really being hollow by the end. It's understanding that you're leaving something behind. And I find that to be very interesting too, because it creates a dual interpretation of this where the visuals are telling one story while the lyrics are telling another, both parallel, both winding up in generally the same places, but also having two very different morals in mind, or morals probably the wrong readings in mind. One is about losing oneself. The other is about evolving into something you're not too happy about being. One's about splitting in two, and another is about the merging of the two. And I find that really interesting that the lyrics kind of push, or sorry, that this work as a whole pushes in both directions, neither one more important than the other, but both equally true, sort of like the dual personas. Okay, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna be honest here, I was not going in that direction. That's something I realized right now on the fly live. I really appreciate that. So this track has musical depth. It has a phenomenal vocal performance to it. It is technically impressive, but also emotionally deep. And its metaphor exists on two wavelengths. And the fact that it is on two wavelengths is also a second wavelength in and of itself that pairs well with this whole idea of split ideas of the self. The fact that the music and the visuals also have their own unique pulls to the narrative. Just it's great. It's great all the way around. What else do I have to say? It's just amazing. This is my thoughts. These are my thoughts on Hollowness by Minami. What did you think of this? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on this? Let me know. Put all of that as well as anything else you'd like to into the comments section below. Above that, in the description box, is a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic